Hi everybody of the vinyl community, John here again. So this is going to be my last and final sort of episode of the series, my heavy metal and hard rock records. So last episode I did V, U and V, and I've actually found one straggler from the section of V that I'm going to include at the beginning here, and then I'm going to work my way towards as far as I can go on the alphabet. So I've got a bit of a vinyl wodge here, so I'll talk my way through them. So the one that I forgot to show last episode was this. This is W.A.S.P. They're a Japanese band. They changed their name. They used to be called Bow Wow, and I think if you go back to, I think the second episode of this series, you'll see that I show a live album by Bow Wow. To this album, it's quite interesting because here's the insert from the record. It's got Neil Murray in it, and I think Neil Murray sort of joined the band to sort of champion them and for them to, you know, get attention and success here in the West. This isn't a particularly great album. I've got another one by them, I think, maybe the next album after this. I think it's called Helter Skelter, where they do a cover of the Beatles' Helter Skelter, and it's as shocking as you might expect. But generally it sounds fairly, to my ears, overproduced, and you know, it's sort of an attempt to kind of cash in on that sort of late 1980s interest in sort of glam metal, I suppose. So there you go, Wow V. Next album I've got, this is another kind of disappointing one, really. Not the best way to sort of start an episode of this, but this is an album released on Music for Nations, and it's a band called Warp Drive. There's not an awful lot of information about them. They seem to be kind of a sort of one and done record by a band called Warp Drive. The album's called Gimme Gimme, and it's unremarkable, heavy metal light, I suppose you might say. There you go. So that's that. There's not much I can tell you about them. There's the inner sleeve. Like I said, there's not an awful lot of information. I think this sort of record happened very much sort of in the end of towards the end of the 80s, because this came out in 89, because everybody knew, you know, bands like Bon Jovi and Def Leppard and Guns N' Roses were selling shed loads of records, and bands like this were sort of very easy to sign up because there were so many of them. So next one I'm going to show is Warrant. It's Cherry Pie. It's a second studio album. Everybody knows the single, you know, everybody's familiar with the outrageous music video that accompanied the single, Cherry Pie. Again, this is much more sort of similar kind of run-of-the-mill, slightly glam metal type band. What can I tell you about them? Not an awful lot, except these records by them for some reason are highly sought after. Copies of this particular one in this condition, you know, can go for as much as over £100, which is interesting because, like that last record I showed, similar kind of music, similar era, and that one's worthless, whereas this one is, highly prized by people that collect rock records. So from Warrant, I'm going to go into W.A.S.P. This is the first W.A.S.P. album, and what's it called? it's just simply called W.A.S.P. Yeah, Blackie Lawless, and yeah, it's heavy metal. So, as I understand it, and you know, this is the inner sleeve. I'm by no means a professional, amateur collector, but my understanding is that these bands like this, and for instance, Man of War, Twisted Sister, they basically sort of form something called power metal, which is, to my understanding, is almost like the equivalent of the British new wave of British heavy metal. It seemed to be happening at around about the same time, and yeah, made a lot of waves. Anyway, very outrageous band. W.A.S.P. And this is the next album, The Last Command. Blackie Lawless waving a flag. Yeah, backside. Outrageous inner sleeve. Goodness gracious. But yeah, I quite like W.A.S.P. I listened to their music a lot when I got these records. So, next album is Inside the Electric Circus. This is, I think, the third W.A.S.P. album. This was my entry point. I actually had this on cassette that I recorded from a CD from the library, I think. I used to listen to it in my car. So Blackie Lawless, he's got quite a special voice, doesn't he? And I remember sort of listening to this thinking, you know, that's a very harsh sounding voice he's got. So it sounds almost painful to hear him sing. But yeah, it's a really good album. I guess I've got a particular fondness for this because it's my entry point to W.A.S.P. Now the next album is the last one I have on vinyl. What was this called? The Headless Children. I know that Blackie Lawless he often had sort of conversations with Pete Townshend. I think he identified Pete Townshend as a sort of kind of a mentor in many ways. And he did a cover of The Real Me, Can You See the Real Me by The Who. And it's not on here, it's on one of the albums. And I know that he went on, I think, perhaps even the album after this, he made like, because by then, I think it's pretty much Blackie Lawless's band by then, he made an album that was like a concept album, a bit like, you know, Quadrophenia. So that's W.A.S.P. Great stuff, really good records, really like them. Next up, change down a gear. This is White Lion, another one of those sort of very popular bands that, you know, found fame and fortune because there was a hunger for bands that were making this kind of Bon Jovi style rock music. I remember reading an interview with Bon Jovi, and he scoffed at the idea that what they did was in any way heavy metal. I mean, he quite rightly pointed out, no, heavy metal has something happened at the beginning of the 80s. That's not what we do. He liked to refer to Thin Lizzy as their main point of inspiration. But so White Lion, it's this guy, Mike Tramp, I think he was Danish. He hooked up with this guy, Vito Barretta, is an American guitarist. He's a very good guitarist. In fact, that's one of the redeeming features of this album is some of the guitar work that he does on this. It's really good. It's the only one of their albums that I've heard. And if I do play it, it is basically to listen to his guitar soloing. It's really good. Yeah, so that's White Lion. We jump forward in time. So this is Wolf Mother. Question is, was it a wise thing to, include this in my hard rock and heavy metal records? Come out in 2016, so it's relatively modern compared to a lot of these. I think it probably is, although I'm tempted to say it's more hard rock because it's got a definite sort of nod to Led Zeppelin and a definite nod to some of the early Sabbath. On Music Metal Archives, they are described as being heavy metal, and purely because they play homage to traditional early heavy metal. So there you go. I've got a couple of their other albums on CD, but this came out and I thought, oh, that's good, got to get that on vinyl. And it's pretty good. Okay, next band. This is one of my favourite bands. Love this band. So this is Wolfsbane, and if anyone out there doesn't know who Wolfsbane are, you'll be familiar with the fact that maybe Iron Maiden, how many years ago was it now? A decade, perhaps more, longer than a decade, 15 years ago I suppose. Bruce Dickinson left, didn't he? And they replaced him with this guy, a man called Blaze Bayley. This is the first studio album by Wolfsbane, and I've got a funny story about this. When I first bought this, I bought it on cassette. I've shown a few records in this series of records that I picked up from I think it was an R Price that was closing down, and some of them are albums that don't have sleeves, so I just bought the vinyl. Well, I bought a cassette at that particular sale of this album. It didn't have a sort of a sleeve, it was just a basic cassette, and I had never heard of Wolfsbane, and I remember I put it on when I got home later that day. I put it on and did cleaning in my student flat. Anyone who's lived in a student flat, it's like they're filthy dirty, and I felt inspired. Go to task and really sort of clean up the kitchen in the student flat. And when I did that, I was playing this album on cassette by a band I didn't know who they were, Wolfsbane, never heard of them. And I was convinced, I thought, wow, surely this is Van Halen I'm listening to, because there's a kind of Van Halen-esque to this album. I played that cassette maybe 10 times round and round and round just while I was cleaning the flat and the kitchen, and that ingrained in me, like Wolfsbane, they're a great band. So yeah, this is their first album. There's the inner sleeve, great stuff. And this is pretty special because it was produced by none other than, if you can see there, Rick Rubin. So he obviously thought enough of them to produce their first album. is, I think, their third album. Down for the Good Guys. Not quite as good as their first album, but it's pretty good. What is really good about them is that, apart from the playing, is that they really sort of fill their songs with hooks, sort of really catchy hooks that they keep in their songs, which is incredible if you like that kind of thing. I really, really do. And this is like a mini album that they did. It's not really an EP, it's a mini album. All Hell's Breaking Loose down at little Kathy Wilson's place. And that's an incredible track in itself, but the whole EP is really, really good too. I love this. Yeah. I'm sure people out there often wonder, why did Iron Maiden choose Blaze Bayley to replace Bruce Dickinson? It's a good question. Because Bruce Dickinson has got an amazing set of pipes. You know, ask anybody, they'll tell you. He's a phenomenal heavy metal singer. Blaze Bayley is much more of a blunt instrument. He doesn't have that anywhere in that range. Some people will even go so far as to say that he doesn't sing very well at all. Which is probably why he only lasted 2 albums. Or I guess by then, you know, Bruce felt he wanted to come back to Iron Maiden, perhaps, I don't know. But yeah, I really like them, and I'd like to get more of their stuff on vinyl. But the sad truth is, a lot of it doesn't exist. It was just issued on CD, and I've got 1 or 2 CDs by them. So the almost coming towards the end of this now. This is a record by a band called Rothchild, and Rothchild were a British heavy metal or new wave British heavy metal band. This is their 3rd album. I think it's not brilliant, to be honest with you. I picked this up in recent years, so it's not one that I had when I was younger. And the very last record I have in my hard rock and heavy metal shelving is this. This is Y&T. Yesterday and Today, I believe they were originally called. And my kids have often asked me to put this one on because they used to come up into my loft office, see it and think it looked cool. And they're always a bit disappointed when what they heard was just heavy metal. Yeah, it's a pretty good album. I'd be interested in getting some of their earlier stuff because they were one of these bands that were making sort of metal type music quite early on, and before I think it was identified as being power metal or that sort of thing. But yeah, so there's that. Excuse me. Okay, I'm gonna stop here and do a little bit of a spool afterwards. Hi everybody. Okay, so this is my little spool at the end of this video to say that now I've come to the end of this hard rock and heavy metal series. I thought what I would do is continue on. I spoke about this in one of my earlier videos made, I don't know, about 8 or 9 years ago, that when I come to the end of the hard rock and heavy metal series, what I would do is perhaps visit some of the bands and artists and albums that I didn't separate from my collection 10 years ago because they weren't technically heavy metal, but they were definitely hard rock. You know, think about it. I'm sure you can think of a few of those bands. So what I thought I would do is I would make an extension of this series, but I'll start from 1 and work my way through right up there in the corner from A, and work my way through some of the bands that are definitely hard rock but aren't heavy metal, and well, we'll see where we go from there. Hopefully work my way all the way to the end, so we'll see what that takes us to. Thanks very much. Check out my next video. Bye.